When I think of the Victoria Line, there are two things that come to mind. It's extremely frequent, and it's extremely well connected to other services. So I thought I'd put the line, and myself, to the test. I'm going to travel the length of the Victoria Line, except every time it connects with something, I have to take that connection. Help! Welcome back to Journey of the Month, the show where I go behind the scenes of London's transport network. In today's episode, I'm taking the Victoria Line from Walthamstow Central to Brixton via basically everywhere else. Along the way, I submit my entry for this year's Weirdest Place to Do an Interview awards, I stare into eternity at Victoria Coach Station, and I take a good hard look at myself. Let's set some ground rules before I get going. I'm not taking every possible connection at every station, otherwise I'd have to get an international train at St Pancras, and the budget doesn't stretch that far. So I'll limit myself to just ticking off the connections described on the car line diagrams. Those are the strip maps you'll see above the seats on the tube. And I'm only doing TfL modes because I have to go to every Victoria station in order, so I can't go to a station before I've ticked off all of the connections from the previous stations. My connections can either be to or from the Victoria Line station, and I'm not allowed to travel along the same piece of track twice on the same line. And that's all in accordance with the relevant authority on the matter, the Victoria Associated Guild of Underground Excursions, of which I'm the only member. Whilst I'm out and about, I'll also be telling the story of one of the most endearing features of the line, the unique platform decals at each station. The first of those can be found here at Walthamstow Central. It's a pleasingly floral design that could be a maquette. It's inspired by the arts and crafts designs of William Morris, a man claimed by about 5 different places in London, though Walthamstow does have a good claim, as he was born here. There's a museum to him about 10 minutes walk away in the house he grew up in. Morris became one of the most celebrated textile designers, poets, novelists and activists of the 19th century. I don't think he ever put his hand to dancing though, for fear that he would have to strap bells to his ankles and wave handkerchiefs around. Let's crack on, because this is going to be quite the journey. Walthamstow Central opened in 1870 on a line to Lee Street. Yeah, so I meant to say Lee Bridge there, but it's fine. I'm sure I won't be making any more mistakes within the next minute or so. What we now know as the Weaver Line branch to Chingford wasn't completed until 1873. The Victoria Line was originally planned to go one stop further in that direction to Wood Street, but that plan was dropped before construction started. With Walthamstow Central as the newly selected terminus, the line opened as far as Highbury Islington on the 1st of September 1968. I'm retroactively ticking off the Victoria Line because I used it to get here, which means the one connection that I need to make is the Weaver Line to St James Street, where I'm immediately going to basically get out, turn back the way I came and walk down to Walthamstow Central. Queen's Road. I meant to say Queen's Road. Which is undoubtedly an incredibly illogical move, unless you're doing, well, exactly what I'm doing for the purposes of whim. But I've come here because I need to take the Suffragette line to Blackhorse Road. Now, when the station originally opened in 1894, it was sited on the other side of the road. You can kind of see where the platforms would have been, or at least I can delude myself that I can. And then in the 80s, the platforms were re-sited to the other side of the road, their current location, for better interchange with the Victoria Line. Let's head down to the Victoria platforms to check out the unique tile design here. Well, you can probably work out what that's meant to be. Time to actually take the Victoria Line southbound one stop to Tottenham Hale. I mean, the platform says southbound, but Tottenham Hale is actually north of here. What is the world coming to? The platform art here seems to be a misrepresentation of that puzzle where you have to take a fox, a chicken and some grain across a river without anyone getting eaten. In reality, it depicts a ferry across the River Lee, which, though long since gone, still lends its name to a local street. Tottenham Hale has interchange with national rail services to Liverpool Street, Stansted Airport and various other destinations. When the station initially opened in 1840, it was just called Tottenham, but after a load of ice pellets fell from the sky, the Hale was added. No, that's not it. Because the connection here isn't a TfL service, I can dutifully ignore it and move on. But first, did you know that every mainline station in Britain has its own 3-letter code as part of something originally called the Computer Reservation System, or CRS? Tottenham Hale's CRS code is TOM. I don't actually feel any different here. Onwards now to Seven Sisters. This art depicts the 7 elm trees that give the area its name, alas long since felled but replaced by hornbeams in 1997. One day somebody will do some sort of crossover event between 7 Sisters and 7 Kings. That day has not yet come. Before I take any connections out of here, a word about the Victoria platforms. This line is gloriously simple. One terminus at each end, no branching nonsense, simple as. So why does the Victoria have 3 platforms here? This one tends to get used for early terminating services, but some trains go further north, just not to Walthamstow Central. Shall I get on one? I'm not actually allowed to. Cue the stock footage! There's actually a little-known legal requirement that any creator that comes here has to say 2 things. 1, the Victoria line is one of only 2 lines on the Underground to be entirely underground, the other being the Waterloo and City. 2, that is except for its depot. I've come along to Northumberland Park to see how they keep such an impressive operation running.
Everything we do is in order to make service, and what I mean by that is put as many trains as we can into service so that we are able to keep that service at the frequency. Every 90 seconds there's a new train, which in my experience, when I've been on the platform, you miss it and you go, I don't have to wait long until there's another one.
Yeah, I always find it quite funny seeing like tourists especially like running for a Victoria Line train, which you shouldn't do. I can see the headlights of the next train in the tunnel as this one's leaving. Like, chill out, it's okay. Correct. It's the Victoria Line. What are you doing here underneath the train today?
So today we're separating the carriages so the floor can be welded. It needs to be mechanically and electrically separated. When the floorings get worn out, they get lifted, they get examined. They've noticed that there's been holes in the flooring in which they need to be welded up and secured again. From start to finish, 10 to 15 working days. As you can imagine, there's quite a lot of things what need to be checked out. All different departments really get involved in that.
It's hard to put across just what a driver it is for people on my team, but across this depot, to be doing a good job. People are driven 24/7 to make sure that we can make service or do the right thing. And when we can't make the perfect amount of trains for service, you feel it. Everyone feels it. And so that's why we say we bend over backwards to do it. That is something I didn't expect coming into this organisation, and something I'm incredibly proud of being a part of.
I'm back at Seven Sisters where it's time to tick off my connection. There is an out-of-station interchange with the Suffragette line at South Tottenham, but it's not displayed on the car line diagram, so I don't have to worry about it. Instead, I'll be getting back on the Weaver line, though this time on the branch to Cheshunt/Enfield Town. Now, I'm aiming for Finsbury Park, but I can't go south to Hackney Downs and then change to the Mildmay at Hackney Central because that would take me through Highbury and Islington, and I have to visit all of the Victoria stations in order. It's very important. So instead, I am going to go one stop north to Bruce Grove and then getting a bus to Wood Green, also that I can take the Piccadilly south to Finsbury Park. This is one of the busiest stations outside Zone 1, situated on the East Coast Main Line with national rail services to Brighton, Cambridge and more. This was the original northern terminus of what later became the Piccadilly line, and you can still see heritage signs implying as such at stations like Hyde Park Corner. The Piccadilly was extended to Cockfosters in the 1930s, with the Victoria line arriving over 30 years later. And when it did, there was a whole load of jiggery-pokery to fit it all in. The northbound platforms were once exclusively the domain of the Piccadilly line, whereas what are now the southbound platforms were used by the Northern City line. No, don't transition away from me, that is a whole other story. The Northern City's connection was severed and eventually relinked above ground, allowing the Victoria to worm its way in. And along with it came this platform art. But these duelling pistols are a little bit of a historical inaccuracy. The place to be for a nice afternoon duel was actually in Finsbury, 3 miles south, the place that the park was eventually named after. And if you cross the platforms of the Piccadilly line, these mosaics reference London's first manned balloon flight, which again happened in Finsbury rather than here. In disgust at such inaccuracies, it's time to move on, one stop south on the Victoria line to Highbury and Islington. This is a castle on a hill. No, not an Ed Sheeran reference, but a high berry. Berry being an Old English word meaning fortification. There's cross-platform interchange with national rail services. It's comparable to the situation at Finsbury Park, except here, the Northern City actually got to stay safely underground. Today's southbound platforms are its original placement, with Victoria taking over one of the platforms. Each line's northbound services were then redirected to a newly constructed pair. I don't actually really like pairs. Above ground you can still see the Great Northern and City Railway's original station building. Alas, it's been shut since the Victoria line arrived, but it does still house signalling equipment for the line. But it's okay because we've got a nice new modern Hey, talking about above ground, let's hop on the overground. Okay, looking at train times, I'm going to start by taking the Mildmay one stop to Canonbury. Now, you might recall I set myself a rule where
I'm not allowed to travel along the same piece of track twice on the same line.
but I need to get back to Highbury Islington. Well, that's okay, because I can just get back on the Windrush line. And that particular loophole is going to be very useful very soon, because it's time to head down to King's Cross St Pancras. This station is served by more underground lines than any other, which is fantastic, unless you're specifically doing what I'm doing, in which case it's incredibly annoying. Before I tick off all of the connections here, let's take a moment to admire these kingly crowns arranged in a cross. Proposals to include a representation of a pancreas in honour of the common misspelling of St Pancras never happened, because I just made it up. Now, the Victoria line arrived at Cooksup in December 1968, about 3 months after the section to the north. Luckily, it's much faster these days. It only takes about 15 minutes to get to Walthamstow Central. Right, let's get myself moving. I'm going to start with the Piccadilly. I can't go northbound or I'm going to have to double back on myself. So I'm going to go south to Holborn, get the Central to TCR, and then hop on the Elizabeth line to Farringdon, where I can connect with whichever of the Circle, Hammersmith and City and Metropolitan lines shows up first. Okay, first up we've got Hammersmith via Paddington. I mean, that could be one of two things. I don't know which line that is. Let's see. Okay, it's a Circle train. It's a Circle train. We're going to get on the Circle line to King's Cross or St Pancras, whichever one. I have gotten straight off of the train, and we're just going to wait on the same platform for the next train through. And the next train through is definitely a Metropolitan line. So keep going, same direction, but this time we're going one stop on to Euston Square. And now I just need to go straight back on the last line standing, the Hammersmith and City. Am I pushing the limits of my own rules? Yes, probably. Am I pushing the limits of video creation? No, not really. Back here again, King's Cross St Pancras, and there's only one more line to tick off, the Northern. And by leaving it till last, I get to double whammy. Tick it off here, and tick it off for Euston too. Let's check out the Victoria platform decals. Now, I know it's hard to imagine how Euston could be improved, but until the 60s, this grand Doric arch was the station entrance. And I need to head up to the mainline station because there's another connection that I need to take, the Lioness line. I'm taking it just the one stop to South Hampstead, where there's a short walk to Swiss Cottage for the Jubilee to Baker Street, where I'll get on the... let's get on the Circle line to Euston Square, which is actually fine because I didn't previously come here in this direction. Then a quick pop down the road back to Euston, and yes, I know the place I'm aiming for next is basically just behind me, but I still need to tick off the Victoria at Euston. So we're going to use that to reach Warren Street. This wasn't in the original plan for the line, but the gap between Euston and Oxford Circus was deemed long enough to warrant a station in between. Warrant. The Victoria platform art shows another word for Warren, a maze. Yes, every tube station might have its own labyrinth, but as puzzles go, this one's the real deal. It's not just a line that was a late change here. Warren Street was opened as Euston Road, but less than a year later, they changed the name. You can still see the old name on the Northern Line platforms. Only one change to make here, the Charing Cross branch of the Northern Line, which I'm taking down to Leicester Square. And yes, I know I'm aiming for Oxford Circus, so I could have got off at Tottenham Court Road and taken the Central Line, but I wanted to come off here so that I could get on the Piccadilly to Piccadilly Circus, so that I can then get on the Bakerloo to Oxford Circus. All so I can just go straight back out again on the westbound Central Line to Bond Street, and in the process I've now ticked off all of the connections at Oxford Circus. But I still need to do the Victoria line, so I need to get back there. And to do that, I'm going to take the Jubilee line up to Baker Street and then get the Bakerloo back down to Oxford Circus. Phew! That's a very regular commute, that. The Victoria line arrived here in early 1969 as part of the third phase of its opening, which included the stretch as far as Victoria itself. With the new line arriving, the station had to expand significantly to handle all the passengers, so a new ticket hall had to be built directly under the road junction, whilst the road junction was still in use. It's very worth reading more about how they did it, with the aid of a large steel umbrella to allow all the vehicles to drive over. The new line also brought with it some platform art. This is a depiction of the interchanges available here, the Central and the Bakerloo. And this is less well known, it's also spelling out the station name. Look, there's an O, there's an X. Yeah, okay, that was a bit of a reach. Right, let's hop on the Victoria to Green Park, where the art is an abstract depiction of trees from above in the eponymous park. This blue one is the tree that you get the flavour blue raspberry from. I'm not a botanist. Green Park is the only station on the line where the Victoria isn't the newest, coolest line in town, unless you count the Hammersmith and City at King's Cross, but no, the Jubilee is 10 years its junior, and I'll be ticking it off by nipping down to Westminster, followed by a quick hop to... Actually, no, hang on, wait. Time for a short Westminster appreciation break. Okay, followed by a quick hop on the Circle line to Embankment, a shimmy up the Bakerloo to Piccadilly Circus, and then the Piccadilly back to Green Park, ticking that off in the process too. Now we can achieve a sort of tube nirvana by taking the Victoria to Victoria. I'm pretty sure Christopher Nolan released a film about this in 2010. And here, yes, that's a silhouette of Queen Victoria, the namesake of the station and of the line. Just think, before she came along, this line didn't have a name. Or a line. Yes, there are other names considered, like Woolvic, as in Walthamstow Victoria, Viking, as in Victoria King's Cross, and the Brick Sisters, which is my proposal, albeit a bit late. In planning, it was referred to as Route C, which sounds like some sort of Dutch football tactic from the 1970s. Let's tick off these lines then, which is going to be very exciting. I'm going to start by taking the district one stop to St James's Park, where I'm going to immediately cross over to the other platform to get the Circle line back to Victoria. Yes, this is a worthwhile use of my time. I'm not done with all of my connections here yet, though. In fact, the station I'm walking to now has, I think, if I'm remembering rightly, the most distant direct destinations of any station in London. A short walk down Buckingham Palace Road leads us to Victoria Coach Station, one of the lesser-known branches of the TfL umbrella. That's a mixed metaphor. I think that the coach's roundel might just be my personal favourite of all of them. And happily, I can't imagine that any other major creator would have made an in-depth, behind-the-scenes video at Victoria Coach Station in recent months. Enlighten me. Imagine I'm dumb. I am dumb. What's the difference between a bus station and a coach station?
It operates a lot like an airport.
Yeah.
So even when you come in, your gate number wouldn't be on your ticket. Mm-hmm. You'd have to actually look for it on the screens, just like in the airport. You look for the location of your boarding gate.
Where's the furthest you can reach?
Poland. Takes quite a while, but there is quite a few international services from here as well.
I believe that there's a service here that anybody can use even if they're not a passenger. Is that right?
Yes. So we have a luggage storage area.
Yep.
Where anyone can pay to keep their luggage nice and safe while they tour around London or do some shopping.
I guess if you've had to check out your hotel but your coach isn't for a while.
Exactly, yeah. So there's an option for them to keep their bags somewhere.
What do you do here at Victoria Coach Station to help this whole operation run smoothly?
So as an operations controller, we send the coaches in, allocate them their gate, let them know where they're boarding. We also authorise their dispatching and departures. We patrol the inside of the terminals, do security checks, make sure there's no unattended luggage or lost property or people. You'd be surprised.
When I was originally planning this video, I did have a joke where I actually got on a coach because of how far off track it would take me. But now I'm here and I'm all the way through the journey that I am. I just want to get to the end, I'll be honest. The end is nigh. And in other news, back to my journey, we're going one stop south to Pimlico, a blessed place, as it's the only Victoria Line station with no interchanges. So I can just keep going. I'm not going to, I've got lines to say. So what's the art here? Eggs. Or it looks like eggs anyway. It's a reference to the modern art at the Tate Gallery nearby, although the modern art then moved to the Tate Modern downriver. Egg on their faces. The stretch from Victoria to Brixton opened in 1971, but Pimlico itself was the last part of the line to open a year later in 1972. It might not have brought us connections. Let's keep going under the Thames to Vauxhall, which does have connections, but I'm not going to take them. The National Rail Station is very convenient for getting to southwest London. I mean, if you live on the Victoria Line and are heading there, you don't even need to go to Waterloo.
That's a hot tip.
Who the hell are you? St George Wharf Pier is mentioned on the car line diagrams, but as the river buses aren't operated by TfL, I can simply make like moving water and wave. It's goodbye. Vauxhall's platform art is a reference to the nearby Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens, a place of much historical note and notoriety. What, you think it should have been a car? Of course not. I'm sorry, I've been straining to punt since I got here. It's not healthy. Onward! Now, the easiest way for me to close out this challenge is by using my next station's non-Victoria connection first, which means I'm taking a short walk down towards the Northern Line at over... Oh, that's why it's called that. Okay, yeah, that makes much more sense. I had thought that the station itself just wasn't very elliptical. Here I'm going to pop one stop south to our penultimate Victoria Line station, Stockwell. This is a very historic station as the original southern terminus of the world's first deep-level underground railway, the City and South London. If you saw my episode on the Waterloo and City line, you might remember me talking about the engineer responsible, James Henry Greathead. That opened in 1890, with the first southwards extension to Clapham Common opening 10 years later in 1900. If they'd continued at that rate of extension, the Northern Line would have reached about Epsom in 2020. Do with that information what you will. There's also an air raid shelter directly underneath Stockwell Station. This is the entrance, and that's as close as we're getting, sorry. The station was expanded in the 1970s to herald the arrival of the Victoria Line, and the platform art here is my favourite of the lot. A stylised swan representing the area's signature pub, the Swan. And from this swan to that one, I've reached the end of the line, Brixton. That one is a visual pun. It's a ton of bricks. Fact check, this artwork shows about 70 bricks, although it's hard to be sure of the geometry in some places. Now, the average brick weighs about 2.5 kilograms, which means this whole construction only weighs about 175 kilograms. That's way less than a ton. It's not a ton of bricks! Euston also has an interchange with National Rail at street level, but my work here is done. I've travelled along the whole Victoria Line from end to end and ticked off all of its TfL interchanges along the way. I didn't bother timing myself because I have spent half the journey yapping. The creators of the line did this intentionally. They wanted the Victoria to be a real workhorse of a line, with high train frequencies and dozens of connections, specifically because they knew that in about 60 years or so, some guy would take it upon himself to go and use them all for some reason. Well, I hope you're happy. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Next time will be a bit of a deeper dive into a completely different topic. Emphasis on deeper. See you next time.